Okay. I think that's a pretty good effort. 2 o'clock, I didn't think we had a chance of starting before 2:30, but here we are, 10 minutes later, so thank you everyone for finishing your dessert quickly. Okay, so welcome everyone. We'll start our afternoon Bible class, which we're looking forward to very much, with a hymn and then prayer. The hymn is hymn 288, "Behold, the mountain of the Lord in latter days shall rise." Hymn 288. Our loving and gracious Father in heaven, how we do long for that time that we have just sung of, when Jerusalem shall be the capital of the world and righteousness and peace will go from that place and fill the earth. And we pray that all of us here will be a part of that glorious time. In the meantime, we thank Thee again for this lovely day that we are enjoying together. The fellowship that we share is so precious to us. And now, as we open the pages of Thy word of truth, we thank Thee again, particularly looking at the book of Revelation, which has so inspired us over the years, as we see that all things have been revealed to Thy servants, if we only look for it. So help us, bless us today as we look into its pages, and may we rejoice together at the wonderful things that are written in that book. So please accept our thanks and our praise as we offer them through Thy Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Brother Mason Mansfield is to lead our class this afternoon on Revelation chapter 8, and he has asked that we read that chapter as an introduction. Revelation chapter 8. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain turning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of the waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. So with that as an introduction, we invite Brother Mason to come forward and address us on Revelation chapter 8.
Thanks, Brother Jack, and good afternoon, everybody. Full disclosure, I've never studied Revelation prior to this, and I've also never heard any series on Revelation. So I've found this a really enjoyable experience, and definitely a new experience for me. One thing I've found has made it easier is having a newborn. Nothing helps you think clearly, clear up space in the brain, understand some complex concepts like having a newborn in your life. So be comfortable with a surface scratching of Revelation chapter 8. Having said that, it's a really exciting chapter, and I hope that you can see that there's so many things that happen in this chapter that are really so easy to see in history when they occurred, and exactly what's intended by these strange metaphors and strange images that we read about. Our goal this afternoon, we're going to have a broad overview of Revelation chapter 8, the time period and the relevance of each of these time periods, and then hopefully we'll get some time periods and notes in your margin so that every time you open up Revelation 8, you might be able to understand exactly what and who it is talking about. So chapter 8 is this turning point in what we've looked at in Revelation so far. We've looked at the things which had been seen, the things which are, and now we're firmly in this stage of the things hereafter. And we've made our way through 6 seals so far. And so I think it's worthwhile just going through a quick summary of what we looked at so far. And we started with the first seal, which was this white horse, which was Christianity victorious. This was this time of peace for the Christians, and they made great progress throughout the empire. But then pretty soon after that, we had the red horse, which was this peace turning into a civil unrest. Looking at a lot of the notes around this, there was a significant amount of leaders that were brutally murdered, and there actually became this auction for the throne, which that led through to this civil war. historians estimate that there was 2,000 people that were dying every single day throughout this time period. Then after that, we got Caracalla, who introduced this taxation and distress on the people. So this incredible taxation caused this famine and distress, so much so that all the ordinary people were unable to even afford to eat. We then moved on to the fourth seal, where there was this pale horse, and there's this widespread death that occurred throughout this time period. So there was over 39 emperors and co-rulers in this time period who were brutally put to death violently. Then the fifth and the sixth seal, which was Christian persecution, so the 10 years of trials and tribulation under Diocletian. And then we had the sixth seal, which was the fall of paganism, or the first of the three earth-shattering earthquakes in Revelation. And this was a replacement of paganism by Christianity. And now we're opening up the seventh seal, as we read, which is going to lead into the seven trumpets, which is this time period of judgment onto Christian Rome. For me personally, I find when we're looking at things like this to have a couple of simple images, and we're going to use this as a bit of a basis for our talk this afternoon. Yeah, so if we look at these images just at the high level of what has happened in this chapter, obviously the seventh seal is opened up, and instantly there's this silence that occurs for about half an hour. And we're going to have a look at what that silence is in just a moment. After that, John sees these seven angels blowing these seven trumpets, and this eighth angel comes along, offers up the incense for the prayers for the saints, and then casts all of that censer filled with fire on the earth, which causes the thunder, the rumblings, the lightning, and the earthquakes. And then we've got these last four images here, which is each one of the four trumpets which is blown. The first angel blows a trumpet, and there's this hail and fire mixed with blood that comes upon the earth. The second angel blows a trumpet, and this fiery mountain is thrown into the sea. So we've got the earth, then we've got the sea. And the third angel blows, and this blazing star comes out of nowhere, falls into the rivers and the streams of waters. And then finally, the fourth trumpet is blown, and the sun, the moon, and the stars have this partial eclipse, so that the third of these heavenly things cease to shine. So let's dig a little bit deeper here. I don't know if you're like me, but this is what my Revelation 8 chapter looked like. So we're going to just go through verse by verse. Now, a lot of the chapters in Revelation probably don't lend itself to doing a verse by verse, but I think chapter 8 definitely does. So hopefully you can get a couple of things to put into your margin as we take it bit by bit. So zoom in at verse 1 here, and it says, "When he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about the space of half an hour." So as far as the time period goes for this section, the seventh seal extends from AD 324, where Constantine was overthrown in the Battle of Chrysopolis, and goes right through to when Jesus returns. So got the seven trumpets and the seven vials is all contained within this seventh seal. And you can see there that there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. So this word silence is the word hush, this idea of a hushing. It isn't something that naturally occurred. It's a silencing, an involvement to cause silence to happen. Another reference to where this word is used, just to illustrate the point, is in Acts 21 verse 40, where Paul was arrested in the temple, and there was a lot of turmoil and uproar, and he motions for everybody to hush down so you can see the idea of raising his hand. So he's caused the silence to occur. So what's this half an hour that it's talking about? Well, when I was doing this study, the three books that I used were simply Revelation, then there was a verse by verse, or the Apocalypse Epitomized by HP, and then a book on 13 lectures. And they gave some explanations to what this. Now, it makes sense to me, and I know that can sometimes be a little bit of conjecture, so I'm always happy to hear some answers, but I just want to go through this explanation that makes sense, and maybe this might help yourself as well. So the space of half an hour, well, sometimes people say day for a year, year for a day, things like that, and that is what we're looking at. One day is the equivalent of 12 hours. So in the Jewish way that they did their days, there's 12 hours for day, 12 hours for night. And we get that from John 11 verse 9, where Jesus actually says, "Are there not 12 hours in a day?" And we know that 1 year has 12 months. So therefore, 1 month, 30 days, is 1/12 of a year. So hopefully you're following me so far with the maths. If we look at 1 month, it's a 12th of a year. If we look at the day for a year principle, which comes from Ezekiel 4 verse 6, then 1 hour is the equivalent of 30 days. So 1 hour is 1/12 of a day, 1 month, 30 days is 1/12 of a year. So therefore, half an hour is 15 days, and if we then convert this to a day for a year, those 15 days equates to 15 years. So this silent period that we're looking at is the space of half an hour. We're talking about 15 years. Now, we're not talking exactly 15 years. It says about the space of about the space of half an hour. So all up, there was this period of peace that occurred that was 14 years in total, from AD 324 right up until Constantine died in AD 337. So during that 14 years, the Roman Empire was united under one powerful ruler, and the government was stabilised. Let's keep going along to verse 2, and it says, "And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets." So this seal is open. John sees the angels, and he sees them standing there, and they're given these trumpets. Now, they don't blow them straight away. Although they're given these trumpets, they're not blown straight away. They're just handed them, and instead they remain inactive. And a reason for this delay is put forward that it's in response to Revelation 7 verse 3, where it says, "Do not harm the earth or the seed of the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." So this delay, this time period of silence, enabled the servants of God to establish themselves as this separate community in the ecclesia. Now, we're spending a lot of time around trumpets, and so I thought it would be a good idea to have a look at what is the purpose of a trumpet. What was it used for back in the day? Nowadays, the only time that we see trumpets is in an orchestra or something like that. Even solo buskers in the trumpet aren't seen all that often. But come with me to Numbers 10 verse 1 to 9 just briefly, because this is where we can see a little bit of the purpose of what trumpets were used for back in the Bible times. So Numbers 10 verse 1 to 9, it says, "The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Make 2 silver trumpets, of hammered work you shall make them, and you shall use them for summoning the congregation and for breaking camp. And when both are blown, all the congregation shall gather themselves to you at the entrance of the tent of meeting." So the first reason, or the first purpose for a trumpet in these verses was used for calling people together. They were blown and people came together. Verse 4 continues, "But if they blow only one, then the chiefs, the heads of the tribes of Israel, shall gather themselves to you." So they're used for calling people, and also, specifically, they are used for calling leaders together. Verse 5, "When you blow an alarm, the camps that are on the east side shall set out. And when you blow an alarm the second time, the camps that are on the south side shall set out." So again, this blowing of the trumpet, it causes this group of people to all move out in unison. And then lastly, if we skip down to verse 9, it says, "And when you go to war in your land against the adversary who oppresses you, then you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets, that you may be remembered before the Lord your God, and you shall be saved from your enemies." So lastly, it was blown as a prayer that God's people would be remembered. So when trumpets were blown back in Bible times, it was used for calling people, it was used for calling leaders, it was for an indication for groups to move out, and it was also to remember God's people as a prayer. So I guess if you have that in the back of your mind for the purpose of what trumpets were used, the effect of blowing these trumpets is also used in Revelation chapter 8, where we see that it summons these enemies to come together against Rome. But before the trumpets are blown, we just have these couple of verses where there's this other angel who offers the prayers for the saints. the context implies to these verses that the angel is representing the saints who suffered persecution in these 30 minutes of silence. And these prayers were combined with incense that were offered to God, and then there's this divine fire that answers this prayer. And a good quote to put into the margin here is Leviticus 9 verse 24, where this was just after Moses and Aaron and the children of Israel offered a sin offering and a burnt offering to make atonement for the people. And God's response was to answer it with this divine fire. It says in Leviticus 9, there came out of the fire a fire from before Yahweh and consumed upon the altar the burnt offering and the fat, which when the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. So this is a way that God answers the prayers, and in this instance in Revelation, it talks about that this divine fire was cast upon the earth in peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. So we get these words here, these voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake, which is this disorder and disarray that comes upon the Roman Empire in this time. And you think about these words that are used, they're very, very emotive words. You see the flashes of lightning, so they're the things that you can see. Everyone can see flashes of lightning. You got the thunder, so the things that you can hear, the loud thunder, the earthquake that happens. And then you got the feeling of shaking, so you can feel this instability. So you can see in the language that's used here, there's this time period of massive instability. People were seeing things change, hearing things change, they were feeling things change. And I guess we'll just take a pause for a moment and just talk about a little bit of the history of the time that does back this up. Because, as we said, this happens around the time that Constantine dies. And so he has three sons. There's Constantine II, Constantius, and then there was Constans. So a real good theme there of Con. And they roll up. They have soldiers murder the rest of the imperial family, except for two nephews. There was Gallus and Julian. Now, Constantine II, he was the eldest and was a ruler, but he decided that he wanted to kill his younger brother Constans. So, real nice family environment. But on his way to actually kill Constans, Constantine II actually died. So Constans in turn turned up as ruler. Although it wasn't too long before he was promptly assassinated. So then the empire was solely under Constantius's reign, who relied upon his two nephews, Gallus and Julian. Gallus was a bit of a failure, so Constantius had him executed as punishment. But Julian was actually quite good. He was so good, in fact, that he became so popular, more than Constantius, and Julian declared war on his uncle. So the only reason that civil war was averted at this time was because Constantius was suddenly died. So all in all, it was a great time to be alive. Julian, he attempted to re-establish paganism as a state religion and was tolerant of all religions. So this became a brief respite for the believers during this time. So now we get into the trumpets. So what we're going to do while we look at each of the trumpets, we're just going to look at each one just on face value, pull out a couple of facts that we can read from each of these trumpets, and then we'll come back around and look at the history and who ties in into these people. Because each of these trumpets are chronological in their order, and they do flow onto each other quite nicely. So Revelation 8 verse 6, and it says, "And the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to make a sound." So this word prepared is no surprise here, to make the necessary preparations. So this involved bringing the barbarians to the borders of the empire. And it says, "The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up." So we're going to see this theme with each of the trumpets, where the trumpet was sounded, and there followed, and then something happened. So sound, something followed, and then it all happened from there. So this first angel blows the trumpet, and there followed this hail, fire, and blood, and it was thrown against the earth. So this language that you can see there represents this overwhelming, violent destruction that does occur. If you think about the first word here, hail, we all know hail, we've all seen hail, but quite often, I don't know if your experience is the same as mine, you don't know that hail is coming. You know, nothing looks different, but then suddenly you've got these great big pellets of damage, this destruction that does occur. And often with hail, as soon as it comes, it goes away again the same way. But you can have all this sort of destruction that does occur with hail. But then it moves on to fire, which fire is this consuming destruction. It's absolute devastation. We've seen the effects of fire, both just in natural, in nature, but also as well in buildings and things like that. It's completely consuming. It takes no prisoners whatsoever. And then lastly, we've got blood, which is indicative of this widespread death that does occur. So each of these words aren't symbolic of a minor disruption. It is a major devastation. The other thing that comes up in these trumpets is the third part. And at the death of Constantine, Rome was split into three parts. So when saying the third part, we're talking about a specific section of Rome. And then lastly, we've got these other symbolic words, which is trees and grass. So the trees were burnt up and the grass was burnt up as well. And these are symbols. So in Judges 9 verse 8, trees represent leaders. And then in grass is represented as the people in Isaiah 40 verse 6. So you can see that this judgment that occurs on this particular part of Rome impacts on both leadership, and it also impacts on society at every single level. So if we put all of these things together, what we get this targeted, devastating judgment on a specific third of the Roman world, struck with sudden force, consumed by destruction, and marked by widespread death, impacting both its leaders and also its people. And history does record moments just like this. And in the next section, as I said, we're going to uncover who fits this description. We go along to the second angel. It says, the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures were in the sea and had life, died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. So this great mountain that's alluded to is symbolic of this destroying kingdom, and we see that elsewhere in Daniel 2 verse 35, where the stone that struck Nebuchadnezzar's image grew up to be a great mountain that consumed the whole earth. But you'll notice that the sea is the language that's used in each of these trumpets. So it says that the fire was cast into the sea, then the sea life died, and then the ships were destroyed. So naturally, this would cause us to look at something related to the sea. And then once again, as we mentioned earlier, there's a third part that is consistently mentioned in these trumpets. So again, this imagery is precise as this powerful, forceful kingdom that's illustrated by this great mountain, but it's focused on the sea, so everything is maritime related. The sea turns to blood, the sea life is destroyed, the ships are wrecked. So it's not a land-based destruction, it's a power that strikes through naval force, targeting the same divided third of the Roman world. So the third angel sounds, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters and are made bitter. So this great star is used elsewhere that as a symbol for a prince or a ruler. In Daniel 12 verse 3, it talks about those who turn many to righteousness shall shine like the stars. So this particular ruler that is alluded to here, it says that they're like a star, but they have is this image of this meteor type star where it comes up, it fell, a great star burning as it were a lamp. So this bright lamp of a star. So just as quickly as a meteor comes, it fades away as well. And what was bright and burning and causing all this destruction, does pass away as well. Once again, the third part is referenced, but there's also this other word which is wormwood. Now, the Greek word for wormwood is apsinthos, which is an interesting thing to have in the back of your mind a little bit later on, because it's also the name of the river Illyricum. And so that particular section or location is quite interesting when we look at who this can be. And then you can also notice that the waters became wormwood, so the waters are highlighted. In Revelation 17 verse 5, waters are symbolic of people and nations. It says, the waters that you saw are peoples and multitude. So in this particular illustration that we've got here, we've got a particular star who shines brightly, fell on the earth, burning as it was a lamp, fell on the rivers and the fountains of waters, and creates this bitterness, this idea of damage, of bitter that can't recover. And then lastly, we've got the fourth angel, and it says the fourth angel in verse 12 sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, the third part of the stars. So as a third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So the sun, moon, and stars, they're images that we are familiar with. They symbolise governments and leaders. Jesus says, you'll see signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. So what we're looking at here specifically is on the leaders. The sun was smitten, the moon, and the stars. And it says that a third part of them was darkened, and it gives this idea of an eclipse. We've probably all seen an eclipse that's happened before, where you've got something that's shining bright, and then suddenly this darkness does go across it, and it doesn't shine as bright anymore. So this imagery is obviously very deliberate as well. The sun, moon, and stars, the governing powers and leaders, are struck and they're darkened. So it's not a partial disruption, it's an eclipse. The light is removed, the visibility is lost, and what once guided is no longer functioning at all. So we've got all these facts and images. Let's have a look now at the history of this time, and try to align some leaders into this. So our first enemy of Rome that we're going to have a look at is a man by the name of Alaric the Goth. So Alaric, he wasn't always an enemy of Rome. It's quite interesting when we have a look at the story of Alaric. He actually served within the Roman army for some time. He was a Goth, and the Goths, they sought refuge, seeking safety in the Roman Empire, and were granted it. But Alaric, he was rejected, he was overlooked, and he was insulted, and as a result, he rose up and he declared himself king, and the Goths supported him with that, and he began this campaign that would shake the empire. He swept through Greece with his speed and force, leaving destruction behind, and eventually marched into Italy. And in 408 AD, he actually surrounded Rome. He put it under siege, and this was a city that hadn't fallen for over 600 years, which was now standing quite vulnerable. As a result of this siege, Rome was exposed to famine, grew desperate, and then society began to break down. And within 2 years, Rome fell. And after it fell, for 6 days, there was absolute looting and devastation that happened in Rome. But then just as suddenly as it began, just like a passing hailstorm, it was over. Alaric died shortly after, and all of his forces, all of the Goths, scattered from there. But the impact of what Alaric did was lasting, because suddenly the world realised that Rome was no longer invincible. And you'll notice how closely this aligns with some of the language that was used in Revelation, because the hail and fire was this sudden and sweeping invasion that came out of nowhere. It's exactly how Alaric moved. He moved fast, forceful, and devastating. There was mass death as a result of this siege on Rome. It brought famine, violence, and immense suffering. The third of the earth, well, this was firmly in the Western Roman Empire, and Alaric's focus was entirely on Italy, the heart of that Western third. And you can understand that famine and the siege, it impacted both leaders and it also impacted on people alike. So the trees and the grass were burned in this. Rome's structure, stability and society were all shaken. Not too long after Alaric, Rome was still standing, but was about to lose something that was even more critical by Genseric the Vandal. Like Alaric, he actually wasn't an enemy of Rome to begin with. In fact, he was invited in. There was this governor in North Africa who was dealing with a rebellion, and he actually called on Genseric to come and help him with that. Genseric crossed over and he didn't assist Rome at that time. He actually took control and swept through North Africa and created his own power base in that time. Now, the reason why this is important and why it had an impact on Rome was because this region supplied Rome with all its food and its grain. So in one move from Genseric, Rome's food source was no longer Roman. And from there, Genseric is known and famous for his naval power. His fleet dominated the Mediterranean, launching these constant raids and disrupting trade and even using fire ships, which is an interesting concept when we think of the words in Revelation 8. Used fire ships to destroy the Roman vessels. So this sea that was Rome's source of stability became this place of violence and economic collapse. And then after that, in 455 AD, Genseric actually attacked Rome itself. And there was little resistance when the Vandals went in and looted the city for 14 days. So the word Vandal, we obviously use that word today, and it's because of these people. They're mindless, aimless with their violence that they cause. And even when there was counter-attacks that were launched against Genseric, he outmaneuvered every attempt and maintained control of the seas. And so you can see, just from what we're talking about there, this imagery, this aligns closely with the imagery in Revelation chapter 8. Because this great burning mountain is uprooted and cast into the sea. And so, just like the Vandals, they were driven into North Africa and rose under Genseric. The cast into the sea, clearly there's this maritime dominance, which is what Genseric was noted for, and being the first real naval threat to Rome. The sea became blood because of all the chaos and the damage and the violence and the raids that they performed in the Mediterranean. And then a third of the ships were destroyed, which Rome's fleet was completely crippled, and trade collapsed and the economic system broke down. Then after that, we have Attila the Hun. Attila is relatively well known. I think most of us probably would have heard of Attila the Hun. And the reason is because of the fame of Attila the Hun. He emerged from Central Asia, bringing fear and destruction wherever they went. Even the Goths and the Vandals who had shaken Rome, they were no match for Attila. So he rose rapidly and became one of the most feared leaders in history. He was a psycho. He swept through the eastern regions. He destroyed cities, killed thousands, and left entire areas in ruins. So he actually boasted that the ground, the blade of grass that his horse trod on, will never grow again. So he just left everything in entire ruin. And it talks about Attila that cities weren't just conquered, they were erased. So there was these entire regions that were left desolate. And so you can understand the language that's used here of the bitterness is totally applicable to Attila. Wherever he went, life didn't suffer. Fields were just suffer. They were destroyed. Communities collapsed, and fear spread faster than what his army did. But then suddenly, in 453 AD, Attila died, and also just like him, as quickly as he rose, his empire of the Huns quickly collapsed as well. So how that aligns to the language that we got in Revelation chapter 8 was, there was this great star that just appears out of nowhere, and it falls. So rises and then suddenly falls. It impacts on the world with this force, this burning like a torch, this sweeping destruction that consumed everything in its path. Falls on rivers and springs, attacks deep into the heart of civilization, not just onto the borders or the coasts. And Attila came from the region of Illyricum, which I mentioned a little bit earlier on. Wormwood, which meant bitterness and corruption, which totally aligns to Attila, where these once thriving regions became unlivable and many men died. There was widespread destruction across multiple campaigns. So then lastly, we've got, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it, Odoacer is what I'm going to go with. So at this stage, Rome was really depleted. It was shaken, drained, and it was weakened from within. And in place of emperor at this time, there was this man called Romulus Augustus. But he wasn't a strong emperor at all. He was young, he was placed on the throne by others, and he wasn't able to hold the empire together. So Odoacer came along and simply removed him. He marched into Rome and removed him as the emperor. And instead of appointing a new emperor, he ended the line completely and just put himself as king of Italy. So just like that, in a moment, he took away the Western Roman Empire. There was these centuries of dominance by the Roman Empire, and they didn't collapse in some great fire or anything like that. It simply just went silent. The structure did remain in fragments, but the authority was gone. It was almost as though the lights had gone out. Historians point to this moment as the true end of the Western Roman Empire, where it wasn't just weakened, it wasn't just invaded, but it was actually completely finished altogether. And this imagery, it aligns closely because there's the sun, moon, and stars. So this is talking about the ruling powers of Rome, the emperor, the governors, and the officials were struck and darkened. So it wasn't a gradual decline, it was the removal of the authority itself. And Odoacer, he fits this exactly because he removes the emperor and does not replace him. And a third darkened, so the Western Roman Empire, it ceased to function as an imperial system for this time on. There was no light for day or night, there was a loss of order, there was a loss of governance and continuity. So I think it's all quite fascinating when we think of the four trumpets, looking at it from a prophetical point of view of how each of these rulers came in and had an impact, just exactly as Revelation 8 says that it does. But just in closing, while it's interesting, isn't it, to look at the prophecies, and it's amazing to see how accurate they are, portrayed in symbology. There is also a theme that runs through these four trumpets, which also provides us a bit of a small lesson as a bit of a take-home thought. Because when we have a look at Alaric, he came from inside Rome, and he rose up and he wasn't controlled. And in the end, he created this little chink in the armour of Rome. And the chink of armour grew when Genseric came along and he took Rome's supply lines. So everything that was providing Rome with continuity from a food and power perspective, he took that away, he cut it off completely. And then Attila came along and spread this devastation and bitterness. Bitterness is the word that seemed to come out in those verses. And then lastly, Odoacer overtook and he ruled Rome. So the Rome before this was hardly recognisable at the end. Everything that it stood for, everything that made it up was just this distant memory that was taken away by these four key moments. And I think the sort of take-home lesson for us is in conjunction with the importance of the prophecy coming to pass is there are similarities in how sin can eat away at us. If we tolerate but we don't deal with the flesh, it does create this chink in our armour. And then that chink, if it's not resolved, then leads onto a turning point, a turning away from our supply. If we continue to allow that to grow and continue to take away from us, then we start to move away from our interest in the Bible and our interest in reaching out to God. And the only way that ends up is this bitterness and this devastation, and the final result is that our flesh can completely overrule us. It's remarkable that this decline and fall for Rome, occurred to such a massive city, and it was just this steady decline that took place. It wasn't a single moment, and it's exactly the same with us as well. When we have a look at it, we can have this steady decline if we aren't continuing to check our defences and keeping guard at all times. So our goal that we set at the start of this afternoon was to have a broad overview of the time period and the relevance of each of the trumpets. So hopefully you're able to get a couple of things in your margin, and next week, Luke is going to continue on with the remaining trumpets, so make sure you're back here for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mason, for that tour through history. It's great to hear about Alaric and Genseric and Attila and Odoacer. I've been hearing about those since I was a teenager, and they are always exciting to hear about. So thank you very much for rekindling those memories for some of us. Certainly a wonderful chapter, and we look forward, as you've mentioned, to next Sunday, God willing, continuing our studies, looking at Revelation chapter 9. So we will conclude our Bible class with prayer after we have sung together supplement number 68. God in highest heaven, God enthroned in praise. Supplement 68. Our dear Father in heaven, we thank Thee again for this lovely day that we are enjoying together. We have shared the emblems of Thy Son's sacrifice this morning and considered the wonderful hope that that has given us. We have enjoyed a beautiful meal together that we know is a blessing from Thee and from those who have prepared it. And we have this afternoon considered that wonderful book Revelation with a special promise for those who understand it. And we have been reminded again that truly Thou dost rule in the kingdoms of men, and giveth them to whomsoever they wilt, and rulers come and go at Thy will, all leading to that glorious end for which we hope. And we have been reminded also that at all times in history the prayers of those that follow Thee ascend into Thy very presence. They are heard, they are acted upon. And though at times we might struggle to see thy hand in our lives, as we look back, we understand that thou dost hear our prayers and thou dost guide our lives, and that you want us to be in thy kingdom. And we are longing for that time. So dismiss us with thy blessing, we pray. Accept our thanks and bring us all safely to our homes, that we might serve thee in spirit and in truth in the days ahead. And we come before thee in the way appointed through thy Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.